Good morning and welcome to WinCAMS webinar number 6. Today's focus is accounts receivable and cash receipting in WinCAMS. So to me, accounts receivable means people that I have a relationship with or agencies that I have a relationship with whom I want to bill and then keep track of whether they've paid, what their status is, how much they owe, etc., etc., etc. As opposed to point of sale, which we are not trying to be, and point of sale is more like if you go to 7-Eleven, they don't know who you are necessarily, and even if you use a credit card, 7-Eleven doesn't really know who you are. You don't need to form a relationship with them. So that is fine, and we can talk about how that is handled and, generic cash accounts or, selling permits or stickers or, walk-up stuff is also fine. But generally, when we're talking about accounts receivable, we're talking about a relationship. Okay, so let me switch my screen here. That's me in simpler times. Last February, Steamboat Springs, Colorado. We'll see if we can pull that off. Supposed to go to Alaska next February, but cross your fingers. Okay, so here's my little agenda that I've put together, and what we're going to talk about today. So the first thing you want to do, so we're going to be working in the accounts receivable area and the cash receipts area primarily. Okay. So the first thing to do is set up an AR client. Okay. So that is under either masters or CAMS, accounts receivable, and clients. Okay. So I'm actually going to do this in another system here that I have. So setting up a client is just like setting up any other record in WinCAMS. You can just hit plus. Some places have automatically numbered clients. It really doesn't matter what the client number is. Some places want to set up their own numbering system so that the name of the client or something like that, or if there's another system that you're interacting with where the client number is important. So you can utilize that and set your own number. So this particular site has automated client number. So I'm going to make this. Now this can be a person, it can be a business, it can be another agency in your vicinity, or your local city, or a neighboring county, or another department within your county, right? So many places, when they want to bill another department within their municipality or their county, they use a journal to transfer the money. But there's nothing wrong with, or we're happy to have the library, the jail, the sheriff, the parks department, or whatever be an AR client, and then you have, then that doesn't mean you don't expect to get paid. It just allows you to track invoices and payments more detailed. Or some people tell me, well, I have to send that other department an invoice, and then they will enter the journal on their end. Okay. So to enter a client, all I really need is a client number and a name. I'll put my own name in, And believe that's all oh no, I need it. I am required to enter a client category. So a client category is a useful tool for reporting, right? So, you know, if you're billing from a fire district or you have airport clients, we have certain clients that manage a marina and some campgrounds and some parks, rentals or things like that, and a landfill even, whatever. So categorizing your clients allows you to report on them without selecting those clients individually, right? So that's helpful. And the second thing it does when we get to penalties and interest, it also controls how penalties and interest are set up. Okay, so I'm going to make myself an airport client. Payment terms don't really do much except for this client doesn't use them. I believe payment terms really only allow you to select on the clients that have different terms, right? So you can have like 30-day clients, quarterly clients. So if you have different payment terms, then when you go to print invoices, or you go to print a report, or you go to do aging or something like that, you could select on that grouping of payment terms, right? It doesn't mean it's similar to the frequency when we did the webinar about project reimbursables, right? It doesn't mean that suddenly something's going to happen every quarter or every year or semi-annually or monthly. What it means is that you can select on that frequency. So you can normally bill your monthly clients over and over, and then each quarter you can select and bill your quarterly clients, okay? Something along those lines. So we put in our address. Right? And if we want, we can have a billing address that is different than our main address. Phone numbers, extensions, contact names, emails, all that. And we save, okay? That's pretty much all I need to do to set up a client that I can work with. You'll notice that this client now has no charges, no payments, no memos, no costs, right? These checkboxes here are, again, for selection. Are they subject to sales tax? Are they a government agency? And then this is an important one. Year end, transfer the balance forward instead of unpaid invoices, because you're going to be hearing about this a lot today. WinCAMS is a transactional based AR. And so what that means is that we want to match up every payment transaction in particular with either commonly an invoice or sometimes a memo. And then memos can be matched up with invoices as well if we made a mistake on an invoice or something like that. Okay, so we're not just charging and charging and charging a pile of money that we then pay against, right? So oftentimes with utility bills, my utility bill, that's the way it is. A cable bill, they don't care whether you're paying this bill or that bill. What they care about is this pile of money. And with us, we're trying to match up so we have unpaid invoices or partially paid invoices and then paid invoices, right? And so then it becomes very important at year end, right? So when we go to year end and we roll forward into the new year, what do we want to do? Some of our clients just say, no, just summarize all the invoices that are unpaid and give us a lump sum as a balance forward. And other clients, more commonly, just transfer all the unpaid invoices, okay? So I get it a lot where people say, I go into my invoice screen or I run a report and I've got these invoices from 2015 or 2013. Well, that's because they were never actually paid off. And we're going to talk about that in section 5C, okay? Oops. Actually, I guess maybe 3B as well. Allocating the payment to the invoice is critically important in a transactional AR system. It's the most important thing, okay? Because if you don't do that, you get this funny situation where the charges might be $100 and the payments might be $100. So you look at the client and you say, this client is paid up. There's no problem with this client. However, if you don't link that payment to that invoice, then the invoice is still over here saying, hey, I'm not paid. I'm aging. I'm doing I'm a problem. I might generate penalties, whatever it is, right? So you got to be careful of that. And that's why, unless you do, I mean, if you have a 2015 invoice that's unpaid, you've probably, if that's truly correct, you've probably already sent that to collections or written it off or done whatever you do with delinquent clients. So if it's not, I mean, if the invoice is old and it's not paid, you can, when it rolls forward, you can just delete the old invoice if you know it was already paid and you got that payment equaled out in the prior year, and it just rolled forward because you didn't allocate or link them up. Okay, we can talk about that later. Okay, so the main tab shows information about the client and the category. The status tab, you can create as many statuses as you want, right? So in the accounts receivable, account statuses area, it's similar to vehicles. So you can have active and inactive are the basic statuses, but you can have collections, maybe you have a status for people that have a special arrangement, or don't send to collections, or I don't know, something like that. We have places that put, well, we certainly in our other ARs, in our utility AR, we have where people keep track of whether people have promised to pay, made an arrangement, or whether they're elderly and they're not subject to shutting off of their water or electricity, things like that. So whatever, you can pick whatever create whatever statuses you like, and then you can tell WinCAMS accounts with this status are considered active or not, right? So depending on what your statuses mean. Account info. So people were regularly coming to me and they were saying, I bill for a marina, so can we add a slip number for this client, right? So which slip they occupy, slip number 41 at the marina. Or I bill for the airport, can you put their tie down number or their plane tag numbers or their hangar number that they've rented, right? And so I felt like it was just going to be confusing because you'd have all these strange fields over here that didn't mean anything to you. So what we developed is an information category, right? Okay, so the information category is a versatile user-defined, they're basically like user-defined fields, right? So if I go into information categories, so I can create a category. So I'll call it slip, and I'll call it slip number, okay? And I can say it's used for all clients. And if I save that, it will ask me, do I want to update every client with this information category, or I could push it with this update all clients, okay? So if there's something I want to track about every client that I don't have a field for, like their tax ID number or their number in a auditor system or in your in some other system with them, or if you use, I don't know, I'm just making something up, if you use Venmo or PayPal, you want their PayPal account and you want all of your clients to have that information category, you can hit that button and it will push that information category into this grid for all clients, okay? You can also simply just hit plus here and create and add an information category. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I'm sorry, I was doing information category in the wrong system. I'm running two systems at once. Okay, so this system that I'm running here, there are a bunch of information categories. So I can say, okay, so I won't use slip number, I'll say juvenile hall number. So maybe these are, I presume, people that are in juvenile hall and are going to get bills for something, right? So this is their juvenile hall number. So we have a start date of 9/8. We end, if we want to end it, our reference number, let's say their number is 12345, and now we have that information category. I can also tie information categories to the client category. Okay, so the client category, let me get rid of this other system so I don't confuse myself. Okay, so we have client categories that this county has defined as delinquent, non-county, inactive, interdepartmental, or landfill. Great, those are good categories. So when I have a non-county customer, then I have the same list of info categories, right? So I can say for all non-county customers, I would like to, oh, now I'm back on my slip numbers. Shoot, okay, sorry about that. Okay, I messed this up. 1 second. I closed the wrong one. Okay. So let me go to Masters AR Clients and CAMS Accounts Receivable Client Categories. Okay. So in the client category, I can say if I have airport clients, right? So if I have airport charges clients, I can list out the things I want to know about airport clients, right? Let's see if they have airport lease. So I might have a field for, you know, the hangar number, right? So there's the airport hangar. So I can put airport hangar there, and then I can say, okay, I don't know what it is, right? But if I want to put something in there, I can. And now I can say update all clients in 310B, which is the airport lease client. I can say push the airport hangar number onto all of the 310B clients, okay? So if I go here and I say client category 310B, it's got to build its list of active clients, it looks like. This client, this particular customer, pretty big, they have about 6,000 clients, I think. So so then I can tell it to push, I want to have a user-defined field for category 310B clients that tells, that looks for the airport hangar, right? Okay, so there are 12 clients, okay? So they already added these manually, and they've put it in. So you can put in the same info category 3 times. Normally you might start it and end it, but maybe, so they just did an airport hangar, and then they said this is the tail number, this is the space number, this is the lease number. They could also have info categories that say this is the that is airport lease number, airport hangar number, airport tail number, okay, things like that, right? So whatever you're working with, you're welcome to create those info categories, and you can create them. And it also says here, information in the reference number field is selectable in reports. So it's kind of confusing sometimes, where if you say, hey, I want to search on the contact information. Okay, well, that's one field with one value. But with the account information, what are you searching on? Are you searching for anyone who has a reference number that matches this thing, or are you searching for anyone that has this info category? Because there's an unlimited number of info categories. So the reference number is your selectable field. Okay. Transactions, this is every transaction that has been posted to this client, okay? So we've got filters up here on types of, you know, every field that's in the transactions, and then we can say, okay, I want month, and I only want month 2, and I get it, and I get a month and I see what's going on, right? So this is every transaction that is posted to this client. Invoices, payments, this is, as soon as an invoice is entered, it will show up here. You can see that all these are posted. It will also, let's see if we can find somebody else. Okay, so if I've got an invoice number here, right, that was posted, and then you can see it indents in, and this payment references this invoice, so that it ties them together. And so you can see your running balance from invoices and payments. And note that this will show even invoices that are not yet posted or printed. It'll show their status. Okay. Pending is pending transactions that have not been posted. So that's pretty similar. This is a list of projects for which this client is responsible, right? So when we have a project, this client or this county does not have a project ledger. They are strictly AR. But if we have a project, and I believe webinar number 3 maybe, we talked about this, but if I go to say Plumas County, because we talked to Damien this morning, and if I have a project that I have made reimbursable and I link it to, and I say the person responsible for this project is a given client, right? Then that'll help me with my reimbursable billing, and WinCAMS can create invoices for me based on the charges that hit this project. So if I go to the Reimbursables tab and I make it reimbursable, and then I say in the Details tab, I pick an AR client, right? So how about animal control, right? So now they're my client. Then if I go to animal control in the AR master, then I should see that project listed. And you'll also notice that AR clients, similar to vendors and employees, has a by name checkbox. So right now, as I'm moving through, I'm going from client 0 to client 1 to client 2, client 3. If I say by name, 2 things happen. 1, it goes from Lorang Brothers to Lorianne to Maya to Matthew, right? And 2, if I hit find, it will look for the I'll be searching under the name, so I can say animal, and there's animal control, right? And then if I look at the projects, there's my project, because I tied project 134. I made animal control responsible for it. I don't know what my billing options are. I don't know how that's going to work, but then I can see the projects that are tied to this client, and I can see the life-to-date expenditures and life-to-date revenues for that project, and when it started, when it completed. So if you have a developer that has multiple projects they're responsible for, or you have a local city or another agency or a citizen that you have multiple endeavors with, and different billing scenarios that are all feeding into the same client, they'll be listed here. Next is our traditional notes tab. You're all familiar with that. If you've used CAMS at all, you can print them, you can insert your date, time, and initials, you can type more and more lines, you can save it, you can create a new, you can keep going as long as you want, or you can create a new page, right? You've got all our normal notes options. This is unique to invoice or to AR clients. This is called Invoice Memos. So on an invoice, and we'll get to invoices next, but on an invoice, there's a Memos tab. And so I can create lines that say, I'm not sure what, but you know, the client says the check is in the mail, or client is disputing the charge, or something, and then that will show up here with each invoice number, right? And it'll show in, you know, each year, each invoice number, and the specific memo that goes with that. So this is just generic notes about the client, right? And you could have 1 page per year, 1 page per month, 1 page per invoice if you want, or you can just keep writing a novel. This one will tie the memos to the invoice and then show them here in the client, okay? Then this, I guess this is even a third type of note, but this is just like our notes, and we have a Memos tab which is very similar, but it's just line by line. So you can. Holly asks, is there a way that the tab could be highlighted somehow instead of the tiny asterisk? I don't know that we have the ability to change the color. The asterisk is what we put in there in our linked file. Actually, our linked files, I believe we use a count now to tell you how many linked files are there. Notes, there's not really a count. It's an asterisk. What I believe you can do, what is it that you can do? I thought there was something. I'm blanking on it right now, but I think there's something that says that you can force a note to pop up. If you really want, if you're worried about missing notes, you can force a note to pop up for a client. So you can set a note and then, where is that? I'm gonna have to research that. You can set a note and then anytime you reference that client, it will pop up like, don't accept checks from this client or something like that, you know. So, but maybe we can bold the tab label instead of showing the asterisk, something to make it a little more clear that there are notes. Or I could see, well, I mean, I guess you wouldn't want that with every note, but I could see it coming up first or coming up, you know, when you go to something with notes, it would come up first. Next is payment plans. We're going to talk about that in section 5A. But when we set up payment plans, they will show up here in their status. Our traditional linked files, drag and drop onto here or browse and then open any file you want. The most common would be a PDF of a contract or an agreement you have with this client, or a PDF of the invoice that you sent them. And we're doing some work right now with printing directly to PDFs. Everyone can print to a PDF just by making the PDF writer their printer with any of our reports. But we are just about done with a project for Tulare County where we are literally printing 2 PDFs, which is the first step towards having an option when you print, say, forms, where we would print to PDFs and then automatically link those files. So you have an option to store the official statements or invoices that you've sent out to these clients. And then our traditional directory, this client has a reasonable number of clients, 263. We've got our filters up here. I can show active only as well. Apparently they're all active. So maybe they get rid of clients that are not active, or maybe they don't mark them inactive. And of course, I've got my filters here. Okay. And as always, you can watch the videos on directories, but I really encourage people to set up their columns the way they want. You can see we have a lot of columns to choose from. So if you want to see the year-to-date charges and payments and from each client, go ahead and throw that in there, and then it's always going to be there in your directory, right? Last invoice date, you know, whatever is going on. Okay. Okay, so let's see. Oh, I think I missed something. I forgot something on account info. There's also a location and a sublocation. So this is more for marinas, airports, anything, parking spaces, if you run parking garages, whatever. So we have a location, which might be, so I'm right clicking in the lookup, and I'm saying open source program for AR locations because I don't have any. So, so then I could set up a location called, 10th Street Parking Garage, okay? And so maybe this person, I would create an info category that made sense, but I could say, okay, this person has a spot at 10th Street Parking Garage, and then, or I can double click in here to bring up the sublocations. Okay, so this is saying within 10th Street Parking Garage, there are 50 parking spaces or 50 slips at the marina or whatever, so I'm gonna call it space 01. So now I've defined a sublocation, and I can say this person, and maybe I pick a category called, I don't know, maybe I make an information category called parking space. Okay, so then I go over here and I rebuild this. Now I've got parking space. Okay, so now this is saying starting on the 8th of September 2020, this client has a parking space, and I can put in the reference number. I could say space 01 or whatever, but I've also got my AR location here so that they're at the 10th Street Parking Garage in parking space 01. Okay, so you can think of your own ways to apply that, but that's another thing that we that a lot of people do, and they have ongoing relationships, or they want to make sure. And then the other thing is that then you can get a report, right? So then you can go to your okay, I remember now. Okay, sorry. So the reason why this is useful is partly because it's nice to have a lookup and not just type in random stuff, but it also allows you to define a distinct number of locations. So remember I said there are 50 parking spaces at 10 PG, right? Well, what if I want to just see what parking spaces are currently rented and not? Well, that's what the location can do for me, right? So if I go here and I say, I'm going to open the sublocations again, and I'm going to create another one, 10 PG 02, right? Space 02. Okay, so now I've got 3 spaces, but I've only tied one as an active info category to a to a client, right? So if I go into my reports, accounts receivable, and I go to an AR locations report. So this, you imagine somebody runs a marina and they have 100 slips, or an airport and they have 10 hangars, and somebody wants to rent a hangar. Well, they want to see what's the current status, which hangars are open of what type, right? So then I could say, so I run this report and it says, okay, in 10th Street Parking Garage, and I could have picked a specific one, right? 10th Street Parking Garage, parking space 1, here's the client that is using it, or that is tied to it. Space 2, no client, right? And so that's why we had to build that location and sublocation, is so that we can show things that are not there, right? So we can say there is no, because if you just put it into the reference number that they're in space 2 and this guy's in space 5 and this guy's in space 7, there's no way for me to say, well, space 3, 4, and 6 are available or open or unclaimed. So that's what that's for. Let's see, Chrissy asked a question. Is there anything that works to attach embed files rather than link them? If you update the vendor or client number, it breaks the links. It should not break the links. That's a bug then, and we will look into it. Links, I'll look into that. It should not. No, that's part of the point. That's why when we update the client number, that's why we have to do it with a procedure so that we can take all the invoices with it, all the payments with it, all the if the client's referenced on a project, we need to change that client number there too, and it of course should take the linked files with it. There's no doubt about that. I've never seen that problem, but we'll test it. Okay, so I've got a client. Let's see, why don't I? Well, this one's as good as any. So in a given client, we've got a lot of people. They want to start with a beginning balance. Okay, so the way you would normally do that is either entering an invoice, and you don't have to print it or send it to them. But you want to get a charge in there for them to say they have a beginning balance. We're going to start out with them owing us $100 because we've been tracking our AR on a spreadsheet or with QuickBooks or something like that. The other way to do it would be to memo the client, which is saying there is no, it can work kind of the same as the invoice, but the transactions on a client are invoices, payments, and debit credit memos. Okay, so one or the other, we want to, now maybe they have a credit balance, right? Now, one thing that we don't really separate out here is deposits, okay? And that's been coming up a little bit lately. We do that really well in our utilities module because everyone does a deposit there, and then when you can apply the deposit and sort of turn it into a payment. And so with deposits in our regular AR, what has to happen is that you basically create a payment, right? And then if you don't ever want to apply that payment, I don't have a way of separating it out. So some people, they just put in notes about the deposits or something like that, because otherwise, if it's a payment, then we'll keep wanting to allocate that payment. You'll put in an invoice and we'll be like, okay, we'll allocate the payment, that $100 they deposit they put in, and we'll allocate it to this new payment that is or this new invoice that has now come up, right? So beginning balances, but if you're just starting, if you're not starting with a new, starting fresh with a client, then what I would do is just either enter an invoice or a debit credit memo. Okay, speaking of invoices, so to enter an invoice, I can either use my lightning bolt, enter invoice for this client, or I can go to transactions, not the AP invoices, but the AR invoices. Okay, and actually I may not want to use this county because they don't have cash receipts. So let's go back to our original county. So AR invoices. So this is the most common normal way that people get charged. How do these get created? By manual entry. You can just say this person owes me $100, or by automated billing through WinCAMS. So we can bill from reimbursable projects, we can bill from reimbursable vehicles, we can bill from service requests on a road, or a generic service request, or through a facility, not the facility itself, but through the departments that occupy the facility. All those can end up creating AR invoices for you. Okay, motor pool billing, if you want to create AR invoices, we'll do that based on the charges that you've processed through WinCAMS. Okay, so but I'm going to create one myself. So most people have automated numbering turned on, which we can turn on for you. So I hit plus, it gives me the next number, defaults to today. Let's see, client by name, initializing the lookup. like I said, they have 6,000 clients, so the first time I use their lookup, it has to do its thing here, flish and flash. And you'll also notice that, so I'm going to pick 21st century healthcare, okay? And it puts that in there. And so these are webinar charges, right? And I can put in a due date if I want, doesn't matter. Let's say it's $250, okay? So now, very similar to an AP invoice, I've now got the invoice says that it's for $250, but I don't have a breakdown of that invoice. And if there were notes, speaking to, is it Holly? Somebody said that. Yeah, Holly. There's a button here to show if there were any notes for this client, this button would light up. So when you go to invoice this client, so let's see how that go 61162. So I'm double clicking in the client, and actually it was already up, and now it's trying to build up my list. So I'm going to go to the client and I'm going to put in a note. What's going on here? Okay, so I'm going to go in and put in a note. Do not accept personal checks. Okay, maybe I insert my date, time, and initials. Okay, so now let's see, I should be able to go here. This lights up, so it's not disabled anymore. So I say, oh, there's a note on this client, and then I can see, oh, okay, or they called and said they'd be coming in tomorrow to pay, or they are affected by COVID, or they are whatever is important to your organization that changes the way you interact with that client. Okay, so if you put in notes, then it will light that button up for you. Okay, so then similar to an AP invoice, we've got we're going to put in our details, right? So we got to tell what triggered this $250, right? And this would all be automated if we were running it through our reimbursables, but since I'm creating it manually, I hit plus. A very common thing to use is a fee code if you want some standardization and also be able to select out. So we have people I know that sell invasive species stickers, or that, like we talked about with slip fees, marina fees, certain permits, right? A burn permit, or a permit for I don't know, survey or encroachment or a sidewalk fix or something like that. If there's anything that's standard about it, you can utilize fee codes. So this client has set up a bunch of fee codes, right? So here's ag device registration fees. So these are probably for scales or something like that, right? Here's rent at the airport, right? So fee codes are cool because they give you a standard description and a standard code that you can then search on and say, show me all the invoices that were for ag device reg fees. But also, if I open up, and what I'm doing there, if you didn't follow that, I right-clicked in my lookup and I said open the source program for fee codes. I could have also just double-clicked in the actual box where it's opening to, or in the grid. So this brings up fee codes, and you'll see some different things. So I've got, let's go to my ag device reg fees. Okay, so what fee codes can also do for me, and you'll also, so they have a description and a code, but they've also got a master fee code, so I can group them. Like, these are all the ag fee codes, right? So if you have small, medium, and large airport hangars, or slips, or shelters at the park, right? So these are park rental codes, but you have different kinds. Some people rent the whole park. Some people rent the swimming pool at the park. I don't know, whatever you do. So you can have a master fee code, so you can select on that, even though there might be 3 or 4 or 7 fee codes underneath that master fee code that gets selected, okay? And then there's a type. The most common type is fee of any type, but it also has, oh, look at that, deposit. So this this can be used for a deposit. I don't think it keeps that. Well, I think what deposit is doing is saying we're going to invoice you, but we're asking for a deposit, right? And so you can see all the deposit invoices, and it may change the behavior. I'll have to research. It may change the behavior of the way that that payments interact with that invoice. But the most important thing about the fee code is that it's got a standard unit cost and a standard budget revenue account. So you can say, okay, when I do ag device reg fees, now they didn't put one in, so they're going to have to say they're going to have to decide with each invoice how much does this person owe. But if I say if this was more like ag device reg you know, small commercial, right? And they could say that's a category that costs for us to check your scale or whatever we do with your ag device, that costs $25, okay? And the money comes back to the general fund, ag commissioner, business licenses, okay? So now when I go in here and I say, okay, I want to use ag fees as my fee code, you see what happens here. Not only do I get this code, which I can select on later in searches and reports, but I get this description, which is nice, and I get this unit cost, which is nice, and I don't have to look it up on what is a small commercial ag device registration cost, and it automatically filled in my budget revenue account. So that's really nice and keeps things standard and is really useful. And fee codes are also going to be used later when we talk about penalties and interest, if you do use those. Okay, so I like to have the fee, if I use fee codes, I like to have the fee code over here, just let it fill in everything for me so I don't have to do anything. So this person, we're going to bill them for ag device registration, 21st Century Healthcare, because maybe they sell vitamins or I don't know what they. Now, then I can also reference, is this revenue coming back to a project or a service request or a vehicle, right? And then what type of revenue is it, right? Or a repair order if I'm charging somebody. This is all automated if you use WinCAMS automated billing, but if you're entering it manually, it's not. Do you want this to go to hit the prior year on the client, right? So the client has prior year charges and payments. So will it hit the prior year there? And if you put it in on an invoice, then it should follow suit with the payment. Then got some funding source stuff if we're creating it through your funding sources, okay? And so note that my invoice was for $250 and my fee code only brought out $25. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say they did one of those. I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to say copy the line, and I'm going to say they did 9 more, right, for $225. Now the yellow goes away down here because I'm balanced. I have a $250 invoice and two lines that, now why did I put in 2 lines? I don't know, maybe I changed this, you know, to something else, or maybe I use a different fee code. I don't know, but I for whatever, or maybe I wanted the revenue to go back to 2 different places, but I put in 2 fee codes. That's the important, I mean, I'm putting 2 lines. That's the important part, okay? Then on the invoice, I've got the normal status or the normal sequence of events is that we open an invoice, then we print it or send it to the auditor. That's our checkbox there. Then it may or may not go on hold if for some reason we need it to be held, and then we're going to post it. Okay. We also have unlimited notes. We've got our invoice memos, right? So if I put in a memo here and I say memo 1 for invoice for ag fee invoice, how about memo number 2? Okay. So as soon as I put that in, watch what happens on my client, right? now if I go to Invoice Memos, right, it says, oh, here's 2020, here's this invoice number, and here's the actual information that I put on there. So if somebody calls me about this invoice, I can go find the invoice and say, more specifically, right, I can make a note on the client that they called, but I can say client called 9/8/20 and said they are suing us. Okay, so now whenever I look at that client, I see, okay, this is specifically about this invoice, and I know what's going on. Okay, so it's just a more fine-tuned type of notes. Then our usual linked files, if you have any, I don't know, anything that you want. I mean, I suppose it could be a picture, or it could be a PDF, or it could be a spreadsheet, it could be a document or a contract. And then our typical directory, right? So I can pick a client, I can pick any, show me only things, these dates from a certain range, who opened it, here's balance greater than, less than, or equal to. So I'm going to say balance greater than $500 on the invoice. So now I'm only showing invoices that still have over $500 left. Now maybe I only want to show sort of open invoices, meaning they're unpaid. So if I set that to 0, now I get a lot more invoices, right? I want greater than 0. Okay, so their remaining balance is greater than 0. This one is 40 cents. Okay. Okay, so manual entry, fee codes, automated billing. Okay, so now that I've created this invoice, that's not my invoice. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to go to my, so I'm going to go to the bookmarks, browsing history, and I'll go back to my invoice. Okay, so here's my invoice for $250. Maybe, one thing to note, this people ask what this original amount is. This is when sometimes we, if we bring forward an invoice from the previous year, so if this gets paid down to like 175, then we can say invoice net amount is 175 when we go into the new year, and then, but we still know the original amount was 250. Okay, the next step might be to, oops, I didn't mean to do that. This one, print the invoice form. Okay, so some of you have different options here. We have like breakdowns by vehicle, breakdowns by project. I'm just going to do no summary. It'll call the batch invoice form program pre-selected to my invoice. Okay, so it brings up, this is the invoice form program that I could access through reports, accounts receivable, invoice forms. Okay, and so it calls this, and it's already selected to my invoice number, right? And I can say whether I want to reprint invoices or not. You know, so this says printed equals no. If my invoice was already printed and marked printed, then this would say printed equals yes. Okay. And then I check my options. What do I want? Do I want to show payments? Do I want to preview the forms? Do I only want to print invoices where they have a balance, etc. Okay. And a really important part here is so normally we customize these invoice forms for people, right? So let's just go ahead and print it. Okay, so this is the customized form. I don't think I have their logo up here, but I think this is like a Napa County logo up here. So this is what their invoice form looks like. Your invoice form does not have to look like this. You might have I don't know, you might have a pre-printed form that you load into the printer, and so we don't print all the lines or anything like that. You might have something else, you know, but you see here I had 2 lines, so if I had different, if I wanted, so this makes me kind of regret that I didn't put in my invoice, it didn't put in better detail. So then I say, you know, ag device gouging. Okay, so now when I go and I print my invoice form, so now I get different descriptions on each line. Okay, so So if you want to print invoices, then let us know, and we can, and if you need to, we can customize this, right? So these guys that detach on the top, other people detach on the bottom. We can print invoices for, so this, remember, I selected on a specific invoice. I could select print everything for a client, print everything that's not printed, whatever I want to do. Okay, and one really important thing here is that we have lots of clients that bill sort of representing multiple departments, right? So they bill for the airport, or they bill for the marina, or they bill for the parks department, right? So that is this issuing department, okay? So here's collections, that's the only one they have. Issuing department is going to be found under CAMS, accounts receivable, billing addresses, or you can go to File, System, and Billing Addresses, okay? And so you can set up as many billing addresses as you need. So if you have one for the airport, one for the marina, one for the landfill, whatever, and then you can say, okay, now I only want to print my airport clients, right? And then it will have an airport remittance address, and even you could even use an airport logo, right? So the same invoice could have little planes flying around, a sailboat for the marina, a tent for the campground, a lake picture for your invasive mollusk permits, whatever it is, a fire for your burn permits, whatever you want, whatever your however you want to break it down. And then and so you can load in under logo, right? You can go to File, System, and Bitmaps and load in different pictures that you want to then print. I don't have mine set up the way that they do, but it would normally print up here at the top, right? So I think if you go to maybe San Mateo County, California, they have like an airport one and a marina one with a sailboat and some other things, okay? There's also a different kind of form so this is an invoice form. Let's see what an invoice statement looks like. So when I select the invoice statement, this is normally saying, now it wants to search through all of them. But what a statement, as opposed to an invoice form, is normally means I'm going to list out like your history, right? So I'm going to not put in the individual lines of each invoice. I'm going to list out that we invoiced you on this date, this amount, and then we're going to put, and then you sent a payment on this date, and then we memoed it you on this date, etc. Right? So we'll see what that looks like. But that statement can have a different look as well. And so we can customize these for you if you're going to be billing people. And of course, you can then select your printer up here to be a PDF. And we're also, as I said earlier, we're moving towards actually just when you bring it up in the preview window, there will be a PDF button that we'll automatically push to the PDF. Okay, so we'll come back to this. Okay, so now I have printed the statement forms. Maybe I put them in an envelope. Maybe I email them to someone. We are capable of emailing people, but we don't have, I've never had a client ask me that they want to actually email these, but maybe once we do the PDF writing, maybe people will want to email them directly and attach the PDF. So we could do that for you. So now the invoice is out there, right? And the next step would be to, well, to post the invoice, I suppose, right? So let's go look at our client. You'll notice that our client has no transactions, but in the invoices and payments, there's our invoice, right? And the status is open. Okay. Almost there with this guy. There's also notes that you can put in. There's batch notes and different fields that come in down here. when you're selecting, when you have to use different forms. And so those can say like, notes like, don't forget Labor Day. Okay, here we go. Forward account balance, and then the invoice. Oh, this particular person's statement actually does show each line. So but it's slightly different, right? But what I'm talking about here is that there are batch notes. There are, some people have other fields down here. This particular client doesn't, but they can have other fields down. We have other fields like prepared by, or remittance note. Don't forget Labor Day is a holiday. Don't forget to, I don't know, or happy holidays, happy Halloween, whatever you want, like a note you want to put that will then print on the invoice, right? So you can test that out, okay? And most people, these people don't, this particular client doesn't seem to have it. Most people have, oh, there it is. So they have a mark printed option, right? So then when we go to the AR invoice, it will mark it printed once we've actually printed the invoice. I'm going to mark it printed myself, okay? Because I don't want to print it again, although I can if I override it, and B, I want to prepare for posting, okay? So post AR invoices, just like any other WinCAMS posting program. I select which accounting month I want to post it into. That's really important to think about. This AR invoice is dated September 2020, but that doesn't mean I have to post it into September 2020. It could have a different accounting month, but I'll pick September. It found my one invoice. Where does it want to post? Just to two records to one client, because I have two lines, okay? Now, it's not hitting any budget revenues. It's not hitting any, I didn't reference a project or vehicle, but also remember the 98% of our clients are on what we call cash basis AR. So that means they realize the revenue when the payment is processed, not the invoice. So this invoice posting is capable of hitting budget revenue accounts if you are an accrual style AR, which means that then we will recognize the revenue into the budget revenue when you invoice, and rather than when you receive the payment. But with normal the more standard cash AR, the client is all that's going to get hit. So I write my audit trail. I expect to see my vitamin company, 21st Century Healthcare, two lines, right? Charge amount 25 and 225. I say, yep, I like that. Post valid records. So now going back to my client, this invoice is now posted, and there we go. I posted it. I don't know. It's about the dates or something. Okay, so there are it created two transactions because I did two lines. I know they look the same, but if I was going to two different budget revenue accounts or whatever, it created two transactions, and the year-to-date charges are $250. So now this client actually has a balance of $250 that they owe, okay? So next, okay, so that's invoicing. Now payments. So this invoice goes out to the out into the world, whether you call them up or send them, print them out and put them in an envelope, or send them a PDF, or whatever you do. This invoice goes out to our friends at 21st Century Healthcare at whatever address. Well, that's why my form is so blank, is because they don't have an address. So that's why my form looks a little sparse. All right, so next, so now it's out there. They got a $250, and so now if I think about the sequence of events, I have created my invoices, whether that's through reimbursable procedures or manually or whatever. I've created my invoices, and now I've sent out those invoices. So now I'm just in the waiting and mail processing stage, right? So I'm getting the mail, people are coming up to a window, whatever, and I'm processing payments. Oh, by the way, I didn't talk about this calculate payoff button. Calculate payoff is if somebody says, I want to end my relationship with you, or I want to pay everything. I got an inheritance, or I'm leaving town, or whatever. Well, calculate payoff will actually show you the current posted balance plus unposted invoices, unposted payments, unposted memos, unposted cash receipts, and any payment plans you have them on, to give an actual sum total of what they owe you, that for all told. If you're sort of midway through the process, like, well, we're entering payments, we're entering invoices, but we haven't posted them, etc. So we're not sure if the 250 is their actual balance. Okay. So now I receive payments for this client, right? So there are two ways to receive payments. If you have our cash receipting module, you can go in there, and there's actually two ways within there. There's a daily log. So this is for high volume clients. If you don't have very high volume, I don't really recommend this, but we have clients that have a high enough volume where they say, we don't really want to process and post and all that in the actual AR payments. We just need to get all the stuff up. We have a window, we have lines of people. This particular client is a tax collector, so they have lots of transactions. And we just want to recognize that we received the money and maybe print the person a receipt on the spot, and then batch all that money up and print a deposit form for the day and get it to the bank by the end of the day. Okay, so that is what the daily log is for. I'm also going to open the cash receipts. So the daily log is a grid style of the cash receipts, right? So every record here every line there represents a cash receipt here. Okay, so it's basically just a front end to your AR payments. That's what it is. It's your AR payment front end. So it's not necessary. I can go directly into AR payments, and I'm going to do that shortly. But I can go into the daily log, and I can say, I'll put in today's date. It already puts it in for me, and I can say, check date 09/07/20. Payment type might be check or cash or whatever. Check number, ABA number, the payee, right? So we know all the payees. They default to central collection. The payor might be Ayren Spinner. That's if I want to actually type that in. Because remember, cash receipts can also take place if I don't have any relation. That's another thing cash receipts is used for. Actually, that's a really good point. Glad I made it. You can use cash receipts, and you can see here there's an AR module, right? So we're talking about regular AR today, but we also have solid waste AR for landfills, and we have utilities AR for utility billing. But you can also take in cash receipts and leave this as none, right? So if this client had utility billing, then the AR module would show utility billing. If they had solid waste, it would show solid waste. You can also take in cash for none. And this is like, I don't even know who the client is. There's no AR module here. I'm not going to put in a client. I'm going to just type their name, or I'm not going to type it at all. I'm not saying that this is not a point of sale system, but it does allow, if you have people that just, buy a parking permit like for the day, or I think the like an invasive species or an inspection or something like that, you're not going to bill them. They have to pay on the spot. You don't need to build any relationship with that person. So you can put in their name or not put in their name, or you can say payor is cash customer. That's fine. But what you want to do is you want to get that money into the system so that it can target a budget revenue account, so you can see how much you got. I don't see my budget revenue account for whatever reason. Oh, I'm sorry. because I'm in the log file. Daily log. Daily log doesn't deal with budget revenues yet. Daily log is just saying we received this money and there's going to be a subsequent processing of this. So Ayren Spinner paid $100. Now it's in, right? If I want to go open, or I could say, okay, it's not that guy, it's my AR client. Let's see, multivitamin. There it is. Okay, so then if I pick a client, then it sets the payor to the client's description. But I don't have to pick a client if it's somebody I don't know, or I don't use the AR module, etc. But I've got $100 in there. So now, once I've got $100 in there, I can print a cash receipt right on the spot, right? And this actually went to my printer, I think. Maybe not. Let's see. No. Okay. So this is this client's cash receipt. Okay. Official receipt. There's probably a logo up here. You know, it's a page saying, you know, what happened, right? I probably didn't fill it out right. I don't know. Okay. So I can print a cash receipt. And this record is now in the cash receipts as well. So some places, if they're high volume, they just have a window person just tracking all the, you know, building all the receipts for the day, and then somebody else does the disposition basically. And we even have a couple clients that use disposition codes so that you have to get two eyes on that money, right? So you have one person that can fill out all this stuff, and then another person fills out the disposition code, right? So let's see, our receipt number. Does it show my receipt number? 007331, right? So as soon as I enter it there, I need a 00733. That is not what I wanted here. 007331. There it is. Okay. So as soon as I entered in the daily log, it creates a cash receipt saying we received $100 from 21st Century Healthcare. It would put in their address if it had it, etc. It doesn't. We don't know what you're going to do with this $100. But now, as I'm looking at this, I can see here that I've got that this person has a current, or this store or whatever this is, it has a balance of $250, and now I want to review this and say, okay, what do I want to do here? And what is my, some places call it a disposition code, but really what I want is this. I want to go in and say what I'm going to do with this this money, right? So I'm going to break it down. Now I can go in and break down exactly what I want here. I can use my lookup, but what I prefer to do is load unpaid invoices up to these buttons down here. So loading unpaid invoices up to the payment amount oldest first. I believe this client has this disabled because they didn't like it. So there's two buttons here. One is saying go out and find invoices that for this client that are not paid and pull them in, and then stop when you've paid, when you've reached the amount of the payment, which is $100. Other people want this button and it says load all unpaid invoices. Then it loads every unpaid invoice, knowing that that's going to be potentially more than what they're paying, right? So in this client's case, it would be more than what they're paying because we know this client owes $250, right? But if I hit this button, it just loads in the first $25 line, and then it puts in the $75 line, and we're basically done, right? So it went right up down. Now I can manipulate this if for some reason I don't want to pay this line first, or I want to put the whole $100 to line 2 or whatever. But but this allows me to very easily just pull in the correct invoice numbers, the correct line numbers, and etc. Okay. And if you use this button, this would come in as 25 and 225, which of course would still be out of balance down here. And then I'd have to manipulate it. saying, okay, and maybe it came from 2 invoices. And I would say, okay, how am I going to deal with those 2 invoices? Okay. And how am I going to manipulate these amounts? But so this did it perfectly. It brought in the first line was $25, and then it said, okay, there's only $75 left in this particular amount or particular payment, right? It knows that the fee code is ag fees. It already knows my budget revenue. It already knows my description. Not much else to do. It knows my quantities. If the invoice had referenced a project or a vehicle or something like that, it would come in there. Okay. Import charges. That must be something special for them. So now I've got a payment for I've got a cash receipt for $100, and I've got the detail. I like what I see. Now in this screen I can print a receipt form like we talked about before, or I can print an order to deposit form. Order to deposit form can come up, and of course these screens are available in my cash receipts daily cash receipt form, order to deposit form. Okay, so this is what this client's order to deposit form looks like. Okay, so it's got their seal, it's got their name, and then this is, you know, it was selected to the receipt date. So there's only one receipt on that date. I could probably get one. Let's go back to our daily log. I remember there were some other ones. Okay, so here's a day that had a lot more receipts, 6/29/20. So I'm going to edit my receipt date, 20, and then I'm going to say I don't care whether it's printed or not, because I don't know, and see what happens there. So now I get a much more detailed deposit form, not more detailed, but a lot more stuff in it. And maybe this is what I say, this is what I'm taking to the bank. $140.50 of cash, $27,921 in checks. Okay, and it might be multiple, and that's just based on their rules, your rules at your particular site. Okay. All right, so the next step is, so it's really important that when we do, whether we enter through a cash receipt or an AR payment, it's really important that we reference invoices. And if the payment is an overpayment, that's okay, right? If there's let's say this payment was for $700. I don't know why they paid $700, but they paid $700. Oops, I need to get these to 7. There we go. Okay, so the payment's for $700, right? So then I'm going to delete my lines here, and I'm going to say, okay, bring in up to the payment amount, oldest first. Okay, so now that's all of the, I'm still out of balance, right? I brought in all the invoices that are out there, and there's still $450 left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another line, and I'm going to call it, you know, overpayment, and quantity 1, $450. And now, do I put it into the same revenue account? That's up to you. Do I put it into a holding tank? I've had some clients that say, well, we can't keep their $450. We're going to return it to them. So then maybe it's in a, you know, refund budget account. I don't know. But many places say, no, we allow overpayments, right? So we're gonna just accept the overpayment, and we'll keep it, and that'll come up next when we do our when we run our allocation, because it's, so if you have this, an overpayment, or you forget your invoice number, then we get into this situation where later an invoice comes in and that invoice never gets linked up to a payment if you're not careful. Okay, so but this is totally fine to do it this way. Okay. So then I've got a cash receipt. Let me make sure that maybe you know, I've printed my forms as needed, and then I post my cash receipt. First, I got to close my other posting. So I post my cash receipt, and what does a cash receipt create? Well, it actually, let me make sure I did my cash. Yeah, okay. So I changed it to. So if my cash receipt was still just referencing no client, right? AR client none, then it would just post to the budget revenue and just say, okay, you received some money, right? But if my cash receipt is referencing my multivitamin company or whatever that client is, then it's going to generate a payment for that client. So you can see here it's going to create 3 payments, right? So it's not going to create the budget revenues because this is just a front end to the payment, right? And we're going to let the payment do that work. Okay, so there's my 21st Century Healthcare. There's my 3 lines totaling $700. I like what I see. Thank you very much. Okay, so now you don't have to do this. Some of our clients don't even have the cash receipts module. Okay, but if you do, then you can use that as a front end. If you don't, you can go directly into the AR payment, and you can and AR payment has similar tools like you know, loading in the invoices and things like that. But now I should be able to find let's see here. My receipt number was 007331. Okay, so so it created my AR payment. Looks a lot like the cash receipt. It's got 3 lines, right? Now I could have just entered that right in the AR payment, but our clients, as I said, with high volume, they like to use cash receipting. Okay. Oh, somebody had a question. Sorry, I missed it. Angela says, how can we enter a payment paid through a transfer? Is there a way we apply the payment in the transfer to the invoice? I don't know what a transfer is. A payment paid through a transfer. I'll need more information on that. I mean, where it comes from. If a person brings in a bag of pennies, or a person brings you a check, or a person does an ACH, that is all, to us, that's all the same. You just want to credit that budget revenue. You want to credit that client. Okay, so you know, the only difference between those things to me would be the payment type here, right? So you might create a payment type for Visa or ACH or direct deposit or whatever you're doing, right? It doesn't really. Okay, so through a journal in WinCAMS. So if you enter, I believe that if you enter a journal, unfortunately this client does not have journals. So I believe that, let's go back to Plumas. So Angela's asking about if you put in a journal so that that saying an internal agency to my county paid me money. I believe, well, let's see. So you have a client right here. So if you put in a client, right? Oh, it's posted record. But if I put in a client, then I should be able to pick my so if I go in here and on the saying who I'm giving money, or I'm sorry, not, that's probably on the, maybe it's on the from side actually. there a client on this side? Yeah, there's a client on the from side. So, okay, so actually, no, I'm sorry, it'd be the revenue side. I was confusing myself. So if I pick my multivitamin people, oh no, sorry, we went to Plumas. So if I pick camp ? Right, then when this journal posts, it should want to create a payment for this client, I believe. So that's how you would do a transfer. Okay, so so I've got my payment, I've got my my 3 lines here, and normally, I mean, if there's anything I need to do in this payment, I can change it at this point. It's still available to me, but now I'm going to post in accounts receivable, I'm going to post the AR payments, right? And if I go look at my client along the way, right, I've got, so you see this, it says I've got my invoice number here, it's posted. Now the 2 lines of the payment are of 25 and 225 are underneath this, and you can see my running balance goes down to 0, and then there's no invoice for the following payment line. So that's 450. Okay, so let's post this payment. Okay, so it's going to post 2 lines to the AR invoices, 3 lines to the budget revenue, and 3 lines to the client, right? Because the client is getting credited with the full 700, the budget revenue is getting, or maybe multiple budget revenues are getting the full 700, but only 2 AR invoices are getting updated. Right? So all 3 are hitting the budget revenue. Only, let's see, 2, oh, I'm sorry, all 3 are hitting the client, but only 2 are hitting AR invoices. Why? Because when I put in my payment, only 2 of the lines have invoices. Makes perfect sense, because there is this person overpaid. Now, if you don't allow that, don't worry about it. Maybe you just reject their check. I've heard of that, but maybe, you know, I don't know what you do, but a lot of people allow overpayments, especially on like rentals or recurring things where they don't want to keep paying every month. So I like what I see. I go back and I post valid records, and I'm done. Okay, so now let's take a look at what happened in the client. Now they're all posted, right? Now the transactions are all there. Okay, so I've got charge of 225, charge of 25, payment of 225, payment of 25, payment of 450. So I have a credit balance of 450 now. Okay. But remember that the 450, it's like an overpayment or a prepayment, right? Okay, so next, that's a normal situation, right? Now, normally this payment would be exactly 225. I bill them 225. It's exactly 225. We're good. Okay. But of course, so there's overpayments, there's underpayments, right? If I underpaid one of these, this client or one of these invoices, then even by a small amount, remember we saw that one invoice that had 40 cents left, it's going to keep coming up. So the next time I get a payment and I say bring in the unpaid invoices, it will put a line in, I got to pay off this invoice to the tune of 40 cents. Okay. If something goes wrong and you need to adjust something like that, you can put in a debit credit memo. Okay. So the debit credit memo is not an invoice, it's not a payment, but it can kind of act as those things, right? And all you're saying is I need to do something, right? So here's this client uses refund overpayments, right? So they don't want to put in, they could put in a negative payment. They could not put in the payment at all. When they realize that this person overpaid by $160, they could just say, no, we're not putting in the payment at all. We're gonna give it back to you. But what they choose to do is enter the payment, then they refund the overpayment, right? And they reference transactions, right? You can reference an invoice number, you can reference a receipt number, you can even reference a memo and revert, and because what we want to do is we want to update that transaction. So if I send you an invoice for $100 and you call me and say, I don't owe you $100, right? Well, then if I want to, and I say, okay, I agree, it's only 80. Well, I have a couple options. I can reverse the entire invoice and put in a new invoice, or I can memo it down by $20 so that you've got a $100 invoice, and then you've got a correction of $20, and you can specifically, even say what line number you want to memo down, right? So maybe the $20 comes out of proportionally out of all three lines, but we want to get that invoice down to 80. Maybe the person pays 80 and then they skip town, and you send it to collections, or you just give up, right? And you say, I'm not going to worry about the $20 that's left over. Well, then that's what we used to call write-offs, but now they're all in terms of memos. So you would just credit that invoice with $20, and you would say description write-off, right? Description, I'm not going to chase this person down for $20. It's below the threshold of our collections. We haven't heard from them in 3 months, and we don't want this outstanding balance to just be hanging around, right? Okay. It's also what you would do if you went to, if you put people on a payment plan. So if I owe $1,000 and I call you and I say, I can't, it's crazy times and I can't pay, but can I pay, on a payment plan, and you set up a payment plan for me, the first thing you need to do is memo down my main invoice. Memo down if I have 10 invoices totaling $1,000, memo them down so that they aren't sitting there seen as outstanding, and then I'll show you what the payment plan can do for you. And the payment plan is basically keeping track that I owe $1,000, but that I've agreed to pay $50 a month, and as long as I do that, I'm not delinquent. Right? So then it will generate invoices every month for $50 if that's what I agreed to, right? And then I'm not delinquent, I'm not late, even though overall I am late, I'm late on $1,000 payment, but you've agreed to not just keep digging the hole deeper with me, okay? So I don't want to dig too deep into debit credit memos right now, but that is what those are for. Okay, so I posted my payment. I posted actually an overpayment, right? Okay, so now let's start talking about, sorry, I missed one thing, refunds on payments, okay? So there's a box on here that says refund, and all that really does, I believe, well, it categorizes the payment as a refund. You're giving money back to someone, but it also, let's see, I'm sorry, you're not giving money back to someone. Someone is giving money back to you, okay? So a refund is generally you paid a vendor and then the vendor refunded you. So you could put that in as a negative AP invoice, but maybe you want to process it through AR. So when you check refund, what happens is that your budget lookup should then default to, I'm going to give money to a budget expenditure account, right? I'm no longer saying I'm going to take in $100 and put it to a budget revenue account. I'm going to actually reimburse a budget expenditure account. So I spent $100 with a vendor through an AP invoice, and now that vendor is giving me back money that I spent with them to the tune of $25. So I don't want to put that in a revenue account. I want it to reduce the expenditures of that expenditure account. So then this AR payment can hit that expenditure account if I use the refund option. Okay, so we are to number 5 now, miscellaneous stuff. Okay, so let's see. Our client here actually is overpaid, so they don't owe us any money. But let's just say that I found a client who did owe us money, like this person. They owe $974.55. Okay, so they call me and they say, COVID has really affected me, or I just can't pay, or whatever. So what I can do is I can use a memo. If I agree with them, I say, how about if you pay $50 a month until it's paid off? And they say, okay, great, thank you very much. And if I'm okay with that, you don't have to be okay with that, but if you are okay with that, you don't want them to have this 974 outstanding anymore. So what you would do is you would memo down the 974 down to 0, which basically says all the invoices that make up this 974, right? Some of them are paid, some of them are not. Looks like they had a 974, or no, they had, you know, we just don't want to keep doing fees and things on to them. Okay, so we go into payment plans. Okay. Holly asked, when you do a memo, you always put a positive number in the line, but differentiate by debit or credit. I believe that is correct. In your memo, you you put in a positive number, and then you reference whether you're going to debit or credit that person. And this gets really confusing, I know, because debits, I mean, if you're talking about a two-sided ledger or a general ledger, debit means the opposite of what we normally think of it. Basically, do I want to credit that person, like that I, you know, that I'm lowering their balance, or do I want to debit them, meaning that I'm going to credit their balance? I believe it is. I get confused by that. So yes, I think you're on the right track, Holly. Okay, so payment plans. So I've got that person 61164. Okay, so I go in and I memoed him down. Let's say I put in his client number, and it automatically comes up with a plan number. And if he has multiple payment plans, that's fine. But so he's plan 001, set the date, you know, agreed 9/8/20 via phone call to pay 50 per month. Okay, so now I can say, okay, the total, let's see, I think I can do this. He owes 974.55. Okay, and then I can say, okay, I want each invoice, and okay, so there is a frequency of how often you want them to pay, and I think we can do a calculation for it, but usually you're going to agree with that with somebody that says they're going to pay $50 a month, right? And then when we create invoices for this, how are we going to do it, right? So you basically putting in a little future invoice, right? So I'm going to say, you know, payment plan 61164-001, $50. Where does the revenue go? Doesn't matter to me, but I put the revenue here. Okay, and I've got $50 and we're good. Okay, and so what this is going to do, and then the only other thing is, and I put in my frequency, quarterly, whatever, and it says, okay, the next 4 bill dates are 10/8, 11/8, 12/8, and 1/8 of next year. Okay, so this, and then this year-end option is really important. We have 3 options: current year only, not transferred at year end. It just dies, whether it's paid off, whether it's not paid off, it's done. Ongoing, but reset the amount paid to 0. That's for a rental. Payment plans can also be used for rentals. So if you have recurring invoices, somebody pays you $30 a month to tie their plane at the airport, or to park their boat at the marina, or to have your services for, I don't know what, street sweeping or something like that. That, you know, and it doesn't change, then you can set this up where there is no total charge and it's just an ongoing thing. And then this one is a payment plan. Ongoing, do not reset amount paid, declining balance. So this is saying keep track until we get this $974.55 paid. Keep creating invoices for $50, right? So that's the third option. So the second option is more like a rental. And this is more like a payment plan, like a pay down. And then this one is just if you don't want it to move forward in the new year and you want to reset it every year. Okay. So now I've got this payment plan. Let's say I've memoed down my client to 0. That's what I would do. And now I run post payment plans as part of my monthly procedure, in which I, you know, generate invoices, right? So I run post payment plans. So I'm doing my manual invoices, I'm doing my reimbursable invoices through projects or vehicles or whatever, and then I also post my payment plans, okay? And so I say I'm gonna bill 10/01/20 through 10/31/20. For whatever reason, it's got like a, what's it doing here? There we go. It does the collect records and write audit trails in one routine, not in oh, we've got lots of payment plans. Okay, forget that. So I'm going to go back and pick my client again, 61164. You don't need to pick a client. I'm just going to pick a client so that we can see what it did for us here. Okay, so here's my client, and it automatically created an invoice, agreed, you know, with this description, payment plan 6164-1 for going to this budget, one quantity, unit cost $50, right? So then when I say create AR invoice, it goes ahead and creates the AR invoice. I did not actually bother to memo him down, this person, Omega, whatever. But you can see here's the invoice, okay? So the invoice, so I can use this for rentals if I have a bunch of people that rent things, or a pay down, right? And then, so now this invoice is not old anymore. Even though his $974 was old and might have been delinquent, this invoice is fresh. And so he's got 30 days and I can start going through my cycle now. And as long as he pays his $50 before, say, my next cutoff, which might be November 8th or November 7th, then he's paid up. And if I go here, now remember, I would have memoed him down to 0, but if I go to calculate payoff, you can see that I have a $50 unposted. This current balance will be 0. Actually, that's not, and I've got a $50 unposted invoice, and I've got $924.55. So his total balance would actually be $974.55, which is the same as before, right? But he's sort of getting with the program, and you know, whatever your own protocols are, if he flakes out and doesn't pay one of his $50 invoices, I don't know what you do. You do what you do. Okay, so that is what you use for ongoing rentals, recurring invoices, pay down stuff like that. I'm running out of time here, so I need to move a little quickly. Okay, the next thing on my list here is penalties and interest. A lot of our clients, government, they don't do penalties and interest, but if you do, that is handled through the client category. So this guy is in category 501, okay? And 501 has, you have an interest and penalty tab, right? So it says start date and stop date, what is the fee code, and whether it applies to principal only or to, can you charge penalties on penalty invoices, right? Because what's going to happen is you're going to create a penalty invoice. So it says the fee code is NVWPN and it applies to principal only. So what does that fee code do? There it is. It's Napa Vallejo Waste penalty fees So its type is interest or penalty, right? One of the two, whatever you want to call it. And then when you pick interest or penalty, this panel will pop up and you say, what is the percentage? Do we just charge $10 regardless, or do we charge a percentage of your outstanding amount, right? Your unpaid amount. So again, it becomes very important to say to pay down your invoices, right? When someone pays on an invoice, we want to link those two up, okay? And then where does your interest go? Here's central collection fees is where they go, okay? So this guy does have some outstanding invoices. So client category 501. So let's try. So then what normally happens is we talk about your monthly cycle. You create all your invoices, send them all out. Then you're in this waiting period, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, where you're accepting payments and entering them and even posting them. You can post them as often as you like. And then when your cutoff comes, right? So if your cutoff is the 31st of the last day of the month, the 31st, then you stop opening payments, right? So on the morning of the 1st, even if payments came in, maybe it's up to you, but I would stop opening payments and I would start looking at my aging and start doing my finance charges, right? So I didn't receive your payment in time. So now I'm going to be running post finance charges and late fees. Okay. So I'm going to pick, I believe it was 61164. I wouldn't do one client. I would just, any client that you want. So you can either collect charges through a certain date, right? So if you have more charges, but you don't want them to be eligible for late fees or penalties or interest, then that's fine. But otherwise you use the current balance, right? So I selected on one person. So it said, okay, I found $974 worth that is overdue. The penalty percent for group client category 501 is 1.5%. So the penalty amount is $14.62. Okay. So let's go ahead and post it, and you can see create AR invoices from valid records. It's not going to change the original invoice. It's going to create a new invoice saying here's an interest charge or a penalty charge or whatever it is. And if you have very complex penalty stuff, we can talk about it. We've had a couple people say, well, when they're first late, we charge them this amount, and then we charge them 10%, and then we charge them 1% after that. So we can try to get in some fancy footwork or enhance the way that this works. But basically, it just wants to create an AR invoice. Okay. So now it created the AR invoice. And now if I go back to my client, my poor client here has a penalty charge from this source invoice number right here for $974, right? So let's see if we can take a look at that. 61164. Okay, so there's my $14.62, right? Penalty charges from this source invoice. Okay. So it automatically created that, and now this invoice just starts going through the process just like any other, right? You can also, I didn't look at it, but there's my $50 invoice, right, from my payment plan. And you can see here that we create penalty fees, unit cost 1462, and we bring it back to the central collection fees. Okay. So last two things I want to talk about are overpayments or prepayments and client number changes. Okay. So overpayments are we actually created one. Who did we create it for? I can't remember. Oh, it was for our multivitamin friend. Okay, so we have an overpayment, right? So there's no invoice for this payment, and it was posted. It's fine. This client has a $450 credit balance. So then now if he never comes back, never has any more charges, then you deal with that yourself. Maybe you eventually send him $450, or I don't know what you do. But normally what I would do is I would say, okay, there's another charge coming in. For client 61162, and I'll call it new charges, right? And oops, what happened? Oh, I'm filtered to Omega Handyman. Okay, so let me go here and do 61162. Okay, so here's my new charges, right? And let's say they are for $175. Okay, so then I go in here and I might pick a fee code, maybe some more ag device registration fees, and I'm gonna say there are 7 of them, right? So I get to my 175, I get this right, okay? And so then I'm gonna mark this invoice, I'm gonna print this invoice, whatever. Maybe I don't send it to him because he doesn't have an actual balance. So maybe I prevent that from going out in my process. But now my next step is just like all my, I print my invoices, etc. I go and post my invoice, right? All my invoices I post. So for client, I'm gonna just, for fun, I'm gonna pick client 61162. Says it found one record to post to the client. I'm not even gonna look at my audit trails because I know that they're fine. Okay, so now what's happened to our client? Our client 61162 has, they're fine. The client, this is where it gets confusing. The client looks fine, right? They don't have a $450 balance anymore. They have a credit balance of $275 because the 175 has posted, right? But you notice that this invoice number doesn't have any payments linked to it, and this payment is not linked to any invoice. So that is a problem in CAMS, and that's where people get really confused. They're like, but this person has a credit balance. And yeah, we can prevent these people from showing up on an aging report. We can do all kinds of things, but we want that invoice to get paid, right? And it did get paid. So what we do is there is a program that should be part of your monthly procedure called Allocate Overpayments to Unpaid Invoices. It is a different name in our other AR modules, but that's basically the same concept. So again, I wouldn't pick a client, but I'm going to pick a client just for expediency and for simplicity. So I go in here and I just say, you would say, find any unpaid invoices that are posted and any payments that are posted that have a line that is not linked to an invoice, right? So, and put them together for me because I got things in the wrong order. Okay, it found one, right? And it's gonna do 2 things to the AR payment. This is really fascinating. It's pretty slick. So it said, okay, I found 6162. Here's what I'm going to do to the payment. I'm going to allocate this payment to line 1 of this new invoice to the tune of 175. And guess what? I'm over, the payment actually has $450 of credit left. So I'm going to in this payment, I'm unable to allocate the remaining 275, which is fine, right? A very simple example of this is I owe $100 a month, and I don't want to pay you $100 a month. I don't even want to get a bill, so I come in and I write you a $1,200 check. If you allow that, then that's fine. you have one line on your payment that says $1,200, and then this process will keep creating new lines and allocating those lines $100 at a time to each new invoice that comes up as the year goes on, right? And then the invoice is receiving a payment of $175. So let's post that. And then let's go look at our AR invoice. So here's our AR invoice of $175. And it now has a paid amount of $175, even though things came in the reverse order. So that's cool. If we go look at our AR payment, remember the lines were 25, 225, and 450. Now it literally created it created the appropriate line referencing the outstanding invoice for 175. So that all lines up. And it created a new line saying there's still 275 waiting for payment. So in my example with the $1,200 guy, it would have one line with $1,200, and then after you get an invoice for $100, it would have one line for $100 and then a line for $1,100. Then you get a second invoice. Now it's got one line for $1,000 I'm sorry, two lines for $100 referencing two different invoices and a remainder line for $1,000. It'll just handle it, right? And so things don't have to come in the right order, but it's important to run that procedure and it will figure out what's going on. It also works if you just plain forgot, right? Sometimes people forget, and the only thing I can do to prevent that is this option here: require or warn if you don't use an invoice number when you do a payment. But a lot of people don't want to use that and leave it as optional or blank because they don't care because they have overpayments, right? Doesn't mean there's anything wrong. It just means either the payment got entered first, or the payment was truly an overpayment, etc. Okay. So the sequence of events should be: generate your invoices, communicate your invoices to your clients, process your payments, get your cutoff, allocate your payments to your overpayments to your invoices, generate do your aging or generate your penalties and late fees, and then start the process again. Okay. Speaking of aging, that's a commonly used report here in accounts receivable, the aging report. So this can show you, things that are, let's say I only care about things that are over 60 days and I want them categorized, and I want a minimum balance of 0, right? And we had to add this stuff because people were saying, well, the client has a balance of 0, but there's still things showing up in the aging. Well, that's because you didn't, because the invoice never got paid off, right? So I'm just going to quickly, I'm going to do maybe client, let's see, AR category, maybe 501, see if we can get anybody in there. No, I don't want to do that. I won't. So I know it's lunchtime. Let's just pick our client. How about that? Okay. So, and I need to do my columns over I've got columns for over each amount of time. I didn't put them in the right order, but you can see here that I've got a total unpaid amount of $974.55, and all of that is in the over 90 days category, right? I put them in a strange order with my column, but so I could probably do this a little bit better. Okay, there you go. The last thing I wanted to talk about was changing client numbers. We have this feature in several of our modules: vehicles, employees, vendors, where you have a client number change. and somebody brought up, Chrissy brought up that she thinks there's a problem with the linked files, but it basically says, okay, change 61164 to something else. How about, okay, so change 61164 to a new client number, 987654, 98765, new number. Okay, and then I say replace, and it will go through, it's running through all of the invoices, everything, right? And it's also creating a history detail that we went from 61164 to 98765. So if I do that, now 61164 should no longer exist, right? So if I go search for 61164, not there. And it goes to the next one. And if I go to 98765, there it is. It's got the same balance. It's got all the transactions. It's got the invoices. If I go to any projects that are referencing this client, they're all there. So, okay, I think that's about it. I apologize for running over. If you have any questions about AR or your specific needs, feel free to email me, ayren@cascadegovsoftware.com. And I've been recording this, and we will put it on our website and on our YouTube channel, the WinCAMS channel.